City's always slow to the stage and table.
And so it begins. We are going to have a great discussion today, but unfortunately, Mayor Patrick Collins has to get out of here about 12:30. We have change of command happening over on F.E. Warren Air Force Base, which is a really big deal. And he's very involved over there. So he and actually Dale are going to be stepping out. So when one of them leaves the stage, it's not because they're that mad at me. It's because they have a place to go. All right, you guys. Well, just as a kind of a broad scope of what's to come, what do you expect for development in the county and the city in 2024? Commissioner Malm, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I think, as Dale mentioned, that the state of our local economy, I feel, is still pretty strong. We see a lot of businesses looking to locate here. I'll tell you, in terms of residential development in the county, we've seen a major decrease in our number of large plats, and that we do have quite a few rural residential lots on the market. And so I anticipate that it'll take a little bit of time as the housing market picks back up for those to be kind of absorbed in, and we'll see a continued effort for rural development. But I am very bullish. I always am. I'm Pollyanna. I'm very positive. I think that the future of our community is very strong, and I look forward to 2024 and just think that there's some great things on the horizon.
Awesome. Mayor, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the challenge right now for us is the housing market. When it comes to growth, interest rates are making it tough. And I know there's a lot of real estate professionals in this room, bankers. We're seeing that very impacted by the higher interest rates. Developers are struggling to want to make those investments at this time, and builders, when there's not a lot of buyers, it's a little bit more of a challenge. But I'm really bullish about the future of Cheyenne, especially as we've talked about. I don't go back as far as Dr. Rainey, but I started in my government career in the year 2000, and we always talked about we were at the northern edge of the Front Range. And we always kept thinking that was going to come. And then 2008 came and slowed us down. 2010 and 12 slowed us down. But today, I really feel that. You see companies like Eagle Claw coming, and some of the small family-owned manufacturing businesses that have chosen to come from Colorado and other states around us, where they maybe don't fit politically anymore. The business environment isn't where they want to be, and they're finding Cheyenne to be a great place to come and do business. And so I feel like our future is really strong. We have data centers in the technology sector that's doing so well. And so I'm very, very bullish about our future. And as these interest rates come down, I think the pent-up demand for housing and for people to make strategic investments in business are going to blow.
Dr. Renee, do you have anything to speak on to that?
I don't have a lot to add to that, other than having been part of city government and in this scene for years now. I've just slowly seen things improve within the city, within the government, with the things that are going on. I agree with the mayor and the commissioner that I think we're kind of that rolling stone that is starting, or snowball that's starting to gain mass and momentum. And I think we're going to just do great things and keep doing better things. And just kind of as a side note, I had a patient come in this morning that lives north of Lusk, and she kind of still comes back here because her parents and grandparents live here. And so, and she comes back every 6 months at least. Well, actually she comes visits more often, but her comment was, every time I come to Cheyenne, I see something new. So, I mean, we are growing, and it's gradual for us, so we don't always notice it, but people that visit do notice it.
Yes, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. Now, Dr. Rennie, you joined us today because Mayor Collins has to leave a little early, and so then you get to be put in the hot seat.
Yeah, I'm the relief pitcher today.
Yeah. So then we can blame him for all the things that you say, later on. But this next question, it'll be great just because this has been going through city council or a lot of discussions at the city level. And so I'll have you answer this question first. Housing is a big concern for a lot of our members. We support modern forms of building that potentially lower costs for builders, buyers, and renters. And we have been open-minded on some of the regulatory issues. City Council has been working on some of these issues. Tell us about how you think that we can do reduce costs strategically while maintaining the quality of our community?
Well, this is an issue. We hear a lot about this on the city. I'm also on the board for the Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and this is an issue statewide. I attended the Kansas League of Municipalities. They talked about housing as well. So it's an issue everywhere. Some of the things we've tried to do recently, we've made some changes to our UDC. For multi-housing, we've reduced the parking requirements, hoping that that'll make it more affordable for developers. We've changed the minimum size of apartments, that now studio apartments can be built, which was something we weren't allowing in the past. So along those lines, we're hoping to change that. We have changed for single family residences. We have gone away from a minimum lot size. Houses all you have to do is pay attention to the setbacks now. So that means you can potentially do a much smaller house on a much smaller lot. I talked to a contractor yesterday and he said, to me, yes, all of our costs are going up, but the cost of the land just astounds him at times. So with that change, we're allowing smaller homes to be built on smaller lots, and we're hoping that savings can be passed on to the homeowner. So those are some things, and we're looking at other things. We're looking at changes in facade requirements that may reduce costs for developers as well.
Mayor, was there anything you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, I think this is, for me, probably the thing I wanted to understand the most over this last year. And I looked in my calendar this morning, and I've had 27 meetings on housing and affordability in the last calendar year. And I think maybe we need to identify what affordability is. And I think there's two things. There's affordable housing that we see that are like low-income tax credit houses where folks get subsidized rent. And then we have affordability in housing, which is just making sure that people can afford where they live. And we define affordable housing as you pay about 30% of your gross income in the cost of rent. And in Cheyenne, a surprising number of people are paying up to 50 or more % of their income in rent. And so a couple of things I think are happening. One of them is that we have some really good developers who are seeing opportunities. They're seeing older buildings that are what I call naturally occurring affordable housing. And they're buying those buildings up and they're putting money into them, cleaning them up, and they're bringing them back at market rates. And so we're losing some of the natural occurring stuff because people are seeing opportunities, but we're not building enough affordable housing on the other end. And I'm talking about low-income tax credit housing, the folks that are servers, that are school teachers, the folks that work for a living, family of four making $75,000 a year or more are considered 80% AMI. And so how do we do that? And what I've learned over this last year is it's a simple math problem. Those low-income tax credit properties, 70% of the cost of that building is paid for through other means. It's not the owner that does it. They have to finance 30. And that allows you to be able to rent an apartment that would cost $1,800 for $600 for a family that's all they can afford. In Wyoming, we get $3.1 million a year that goes towards these low-income tax credit homes. And that's for all 23 counties and we have 99 municipalities, but there's probably only maybe 40 or 50 of them that are large enough to ever want to do something like that. But $3.1 million doesn't go very far. So in Cheyenne, we're getting maybe a 45 unit building every 18 months or 2 years. And so we're losing properties on one end and we're not building enough on the other end. And so now that I understand the math of it, what we're trying to do is figure out how can we fill that 70% gap that comes from low income tax credits so we can build more. So instead of building 40, can we build 250 units at a time? So that's it. And then as Dr. Rennie was talking about, Harvard is here right now in the state. They were hired by the Wyoming Business Council to say, why is Wyoming's economy lagging so far behind our neighbors? So you look at Colorado and Utah and Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, their economies are doing significantly better than ours. So they hired this group from Harvard to look at it. And they were in the state for maybe a couple of months, and they realized right away that we can't build a workforce in order to grow our economy because there's no place for people to live. And so since then, they've been spending most of their time talking about what can we do to do that. And so as Dr. Rennie said, we have looked at all of their suggestions, getting rid of the minimum lot size. If you have a 7,000 or 8,000 square foot lot, and putting a 1,000 square foot home on it doesn't make sense because of the cost of the building. So people are building to maximize what they can get onto a lot. So now we're going to be able to build houses on smaller lots. You have less infrastructure, less land. So we hopefully can build more affordability in housing. And so we're trying to do those UDC changes. I think we looked, was it 14 of them that we've done here in just in the last couple of years, 14 changes to our UDC that would hopefully help with affordability. And so we're understanding the issues, but it's really a challenge.
Just to follow up on that, just to give people a perspective, if you drive through Thomas Heights, the lots in there average around 7,000 square feet. If conceivably with no minimum lot requirements anymore and just going by setbacks, you could have a lot that's down to 3,500 to 4,000 square feet. So again, we're just hoping we can reduce the land costs to make housing affordable in some areas.
And ladies and gentlemen, I will apologize. I have to leave here in about 3 minutes. Senator Tuberville was filibustering all of the changes of command and all the general officers. None of the general officers were able to be promoted for the last year. Well, they just turned that off. And so they surprised us with the change of command for 20th Air Force. General Huser is going to take over today. And Dale and I need to be there at that event. So we're going to have to slip out of here in a couple of minutes. My apologies, but thank you for Dr. Rennie for filling in for us.
Well, Mayor, before you go, and I'll lead you off with this question so that you can answer it and then run, right?
I'll run fast.
Ooh, this could be a fun answer. Last year, the chamber did a survey for our members on the city and county processes from application to approval. What are each of your organizations doing to improve this process and make Cheyenne a business-friendly community by helping our new projects get to yes?
Yeah, so Paula and Dale shared that result with us, Gunnar, Mom and I. And it showed there was a lot of discontent with the building process in Cheyenne. But what I came away from that was nothing that was actionable that we could fix. So they asked, what would your recommendations be? And it was like, fix the UDC or do things faster or time is money. And so I'm trying to figure out how do I go to the governing body and how do we make changes that would affect that? But as I read it, and I read it again the last couple of days, there wasn't anything I could say, this is what we need to do to fix that problem. And so I asked our staff to go through, and I think there was like 3,500 building permits we pulled last year. And I said, I think I have time for 12 or 15 interviews with these folks. So we divided it by 15 and we just randomly pulled those building permits. And I'm actually working on doing individual interviews with those builders right now to talk about it from start to finish. Did you have to annex your property? What was that experience like? The timeframes, the delays, what things do we need to do better? Did you have to change your zoning? How was the process of getting your building permit? Was it done timely? What do you see as being the roadblocks so that we can try to figure out actionable things? The chamber and the Southeast builders talked to us about not having enough or taking too long for inspections. And so when we got done with that meeting, we talked about what was their expectation. And it was 24 to 48 hours. So we hired 2 or 3 different inspectors, another plan reviewer. We hired 2 or 3 more planners, 2 engineers, so that we could speed up those times as best that we could, because we realized we probably didn't have enough staff. And so that's what we're looking for, is to try to figure out specifically what is it that are hurdles, and then we can try to figure out what the best way to solve those problems are. And so that's what we're doing. And it's interesting for me, I got one of the building permits we pulled was a Microsoft $70 million project. Another one was a large multi-million-dollar capital commercial building, all the way down to a couple small ones like replacing an HVAC in a home and everywhere in between. So it was a really nice cross-section that we randomly picked up. So I'm really interested in seeing how those interviews go. I'm going to meet with them all individually, and I'll report back to the chamber what we get and what specifically we think we can do to try to improve that situation.
Awesome. Thank you. Please give a round of applause for Mayor Collins for being. All right, Commissioner Mom, would you like to go ahead and answer that question?
Certainly. So I appreciate the chamber putting out that survey and allowing us to get feedback from the business community on what it's like to deal with our departments. We obviously are in a position where we have updates and meetings with them, but getting that direct feedback has always been beneficial. And so what we took away from that is our directive has always been get to yes, like do what you have to do to get to yes. with our directors, especially in building and planning. And we have a directive as well that 10 days is the maximum time for a turnaround on a permit. And I can tell you that in the last year and a half, our times have by and large been underneath that 10-day time frame. And sometimes in the case of 2 or 3 days is kind of the average. Where we run into issues and where we're trying to tackle now is that I want Paula to be able to bring a project to Laramie County and navigate the process without having to hire AVI. No offense to AVI or another large engineering firm, but I truly believe that as a citizen, you should be able to approach your government and get a project through, within reason, if you don't need drainage studies and a lot of other stuff, but you should be able to navigate that process as a citizen. And so we've undertaken a kind of overhaul of our land use regulations in a way to not only simplify them, but make them just flow a little bit better. And also introduce more areas where we can do an administrative approval. So it doesn't have to go through the whole process. Because there's a lot of times when things are smaller scale that you don't need to necessarily have the full vetting of a planning commission and a county commission, and you can get going on your project. And so those land use regulation changes are actually out to public comment right now. I think the time frame, the 45 days started on Tuesday. So you'll have the next 40 days. I'd encourage you to go to the website, look at those changes, give us your feedback. We're always looking to change and make things better. Like that is our goal, is to make things better. And we open up these land use regulations annually and ask for people to give changes. We get a lot of people that come when there's a subdivision in their neighborhood and they're not happy with our subdivision regulations. We say, okay, bring us a change. We have to follow our rules. You don't like it, tell us what to change. And unfortunately, a lot of those people that are really angry and come to our meetings and tell us, how awful it is, don't show up when we open up the land use regulations and say, give us a solution, give us a change. I'm happy to look and change anything if it makes sense. And so without the input of the public in that process, it's difficult for us to make the changes that in the end upset people. And so I'd encourage you, if you have interest in that, go look at them, call me. My phone number is everywhere. Happy to meet with you, have coffee, talk about those changes. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dr. Rennie, any comments there, or are you good on that?
Actually, no, I think the mayor had addressed that really well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. All right, the adversarial purchase of property in Cheyenne is an ongoing issue. The military has warned us about this issue numerous times. What do you think should be done about this problem? And in particular, I guess, adversarial ownership of property, particularly around like our Air Force Base, major infrastructure, and more speaking about commercial and businesses more than residential. So Commissioner Mull?
Yeah, so it is certainly an issue that we see and have seen play out here in our local community. We've seen it in one of our business parks where this has occurred. The sticky thing is when you get to the legislature and you start talking about this and formulating a bill, is you have 93 members of the Wyoming legislature all introducing their opinion and their feelings, some of which are probably not founded in any sort of reality, to be quite honest. But they are, you start to see these changes that they want to, this bill just kind of grows and morphs into something that's not actually palatable or operational in the real world. You have to understand that in the western part of our state, major trona producers are all owned by Australian companies. Today, Australia is not an adversarial nation, but what's to say tomorrow and who makes that list? And so it's very nuanced. There's the other part of it that I struggle with in my other job and with my other hat on, and Tanya can speak to this as well, as a realtor, I have to abide by a code of ethics. And that code of ethics does not allow me to do anything or to discriminate against anybody based upon nation of origin. And so how does that put our realtor community and those people that deal with property and deal with these sales day in and day out, what kind of position does that put them in to make these judgment calls about, am I following state law? Am I risking my license and my livelihood? And so it is nuanced, and I certainly think there is a solution out there, and I'm hopeful that the legislature will take a rational and kind of even-handed approach to it, and I think we can get there, but we have to keep the overreaching tone and tenor that can happen on political hot button issues, especially at the national scale in our local politics. And I think we can get a solution.
I honestly don't know how you would handle this. I almost think that maybe the federal government has to designate critical areas next to bases or what they consider to be critical infrastructure. But then what do you impose on sales in those areas, and what kind of background checks have to be done, and who's responsible for that? Once I started talking about this and looking about this, I thought, I don't know where it ends, and it really touches on private property rights, which is certainly, a hot button issue too. So honestly, the mayor and I talked about this a little bit at a municipality level. I'm not sure what we do. This is way above our pay grade.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's why it's so important to have legislation on this so that it takes the burden off, like the real estate community, title companies or whatnot. I met last night with some people from North Dakota, a state senator, and actually a councilman in Minot, North Dakota as well. And North Dakota passed legislation on this. And it didn't come down to anything residential, whereas really we would be highly impacted from a real estate community. But having, if the business is over 50% or more owned by a foreign adversarial company, so more commercial speaking, that it would prohibit them from owning commercial property, in a given state. And so that's what North Dakota did. So we're watching some of these things. We have Senator Nethercott actually is working on kind of writing something up and getting it to the governor's office. So we hope to see that in the coming week, because we are just really close to. So.
The question, Tanya, is how do you guys know that? I mean, if a company approaches you saying, we're interested in this piece of property that's for sale, who's going to do the research? How do you, or how does Gunner know that what the ownership percentages are? I mean.
Well, and so that wouldn't be for us to decide, right? That would be for government essentially to decide. That it would be completely out of our hands. So it's tough. I know it's a hard one. That's why I wanted to ask kind of your opinion and kind of the chamber's approach for how we're looking into trying to handle this situation as it is a concern for our Air Force Base. According to the Wyoming Center for Business and Economic Analysis, retail, warehousing, medical office, and office space increase in availability this year. What is your outlook for growth in 2024?
Well, I think as we alluded to earlier, I think we are expecting continued growth. Sorry. I think with some of the developments that are going on, warehouse space is going to continue to be in demand. I think in a lot of ways, some of the other areas are probably being pretty well met at this point. And again, as the mayor said, there's probably not until interest rates come down a little bit or people get acclimated to where they're currently at. I think we're going to see growth, but somewhat slow for a while. But as we said earlier, we're all optimistic and we do foresee that picking up at some point.
Commissioner?
Yeah, so I think that we've seen warehouse space. I mean, if you've got a warehouse, you can get it leased, you can get it sold. There's a really high demand in our area, given what our economy is doing and kind of what sectors we're serving and providing for. The other stuff, some of that is way beyond the control of the local government or local business community, because it's just a shift in how certain professions do business, right? There was a time when law firms were the largest renters of space in the United States. And that's because they had to have a lot of books and a lot of files. And honestly, and as you look, as technology progresses and the footprint that a law firm needs has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, and they're no longer, leading the pack on being lessors in the market and in the United States. So I think we see that in all sorts of things, from telemedicine and medical facilities to a host of other businesses. And so I think it's just going to take the business community and the investment community reacting to that and coming up with solutions to fill those spaces and look at different business models that might fit in a traditional space that was for X, now it's going to be for Y.
Awesome. Well, kind of shifting gears just a little bit, the Cheyenne Chamber has been working diligently on transportation issues down the Front Range, ideally continuing our efforts to strengthen I-25 and and have local train service with a station in the downtown area, among other properties. What is this city and county going to do to help us achieve these goals? Councilman?
Well, the city's really supportive of this. We've set aside, our MPO has set aside monies to do a study to determine what would be the ideal location, the most feasible location for a passenger depot in downtown. We're trying to determine what that would be. And then in addition, the mayor has recently appointed a Front Range Rail Task Force Committee, which has several people in transportation industry, plus some legislators. I think Commissioner Malm, you're a member of that committee. And just to try and do what we can on our part to keep that moving forward and try and secure something. So as I said, we've been real supportive. Those are a couple of the efforts we've done. Commissioner, you're part of that committee, so you may be able to better answer this than I.
Yeah, so I'm very appreciative that the mayor included not only myself, but then our planning director at the county on the committee that's going to look at rail and bringing it to our community. We've had one meeting so far. I'd tell you that the first kind of portion is we're looking feasibility and funding. Those are the two real parts. And I'll tell you the funding portion is a large number potentially. And so we need to really make sure at first and up front that we're there at the table as they have these discussions in Northern Colorado, and make sure that we're part of that conversation. So if we can do economies of scale and capitalize on when they're doing these projects and getting it all the way to Fort Collins and then beyond, that we're just there and ready. And so I think that's kind of the point of the task force, is to just make sure that we're having the conversations, we're investigating portions of the project and what it would really take to be feasible. And then, of course, the funding portion is something that, there's multiple avenues, federal, state, even local funding options that we could look at when that time comes.
Awesome, thanks. Commissioner Malm, I'll have you answer this question first, especially since you seem to love the legislative process so much. The legislature continues to put pressure on local budgets through the legislative process. What solutions do you see for letting local government make more decisions regarding their budgets and income?
Yeah, so local control, that's what everybody loves to say, especially in the Wyoming legislature, is like, let's have some local control. But they really hamstringed local communities on what that means and what we can do, and what our community historically has been willing to invest in itself, whether it's the 5th penny or the 6th penny projects. We invest in ourselves, and I think we should be allowed to do that. I think our voters should get to make that determination every 1 to 5 years, depending upon, what the projects are and how that ballot works out. Unfortunately, at this time, I don't foresee this legislature and the makeup of it allowing for any more additional options for revenue. We have some great Laramie County legislators. We have some truly phenomenal ones. Problem is, we can only control and vote for the ones in Laramie County. And quite honestly, we've got a lot of people that tilt at windmills and do things both figuratively and literally, tilting at windmills and fighting issues that don't improve the daily lives of Wyoming citizens, right? And that's what I was elected to do, was to make tomorrow better than today. And how do I do that? I put it to the voters, and I come with a project that'll do that, and we all make a decision as a community if we want to see it through. And unfortunately, we don't have that option right now. And I don't know when that tenor will change in the legislature, that local control will actually mean local control. But I'm hopeful, and I'll continue to make efforts through the County Commissioners Association and as a private citizen to get that opportunity for you guys to decide what your community looks like and what you pay for to make it look that way.
My microphone is on. I'm going to fix your problem with your microphone. All right. Well, when we look at crime rates, let's see. No, I actually want you to answer that question.
Just to add to
Thanks.
that, again, as part of Wyoming Association of Municipalities and within the council, we talk about that. I agree with everything the commissioner said. We always hear from the legislature how they believe in local control until they don't, which usually is they don't believe in it when it comes to us spending our money on how we think we ought to be best spend it. I think we've done a great job in Cheyenne of developing our local economy, trying to make Cheyenne a place where people want to move to and businesses want to move to. And I think we're gathering momentum, but so much of our budget is dependent upon the legislature, and sometimes the restrictions they put on money almost makes it not worth acquiring. And again, don't foresee that changing this next session anytime soon.
Did you have final thoughts on that?
Yeah, can I just add a little bit more? And I apologize, but I'm so.
Go on, you're doing great.
So the local government is funded by property taxes, right? And everybody in the state of Wyoming and the legislature is talking about property tax relief. And no doubt we've seen home values and valuations rise over the last number of years. And there are people in our communities that are actually struggling, no doubt about it. But some of the efforts that have been put forward by the legislature and even citizens with petition efforts will vastly change how your community looks in Cheyenne, but more importantly, in our outlying communities like Pine Bluffs, Albin, and Burns. Our counties like Niobrara County, Uinta County, you take 50% of their residential income and they don't look the same. They can't provide basic governmental services. We have been beneficiaries of an oil and gas industry that has made a way of life for most citizens in Wyoming that we have taken for granted, quite honestly. You look at all our neighbors and our property taxes, they are much, much higher. Is there a way to address property tax relief for citizens? Yes. The governor has extra money in his bill to do so. If the 3,000 people that are in tax sale right now across the state, if all 3,000 of them, if you believe they're all there for an economic hardship, there is money to pay their property taxes in this budget. If you go with the petition and you cut all of that 50%, local government has been assured that we can go to the state and get the $300 million that we'll all lose out on. But they promised us that with sales tax on food. And we go back every year and have to beg and fight for the $100 million that eliminated from our budgets. And so property tax relief is needed, but there's a better, more surgical way that actually helps all the people that need it and doesn't help, the folks that don't and the folks in Jackson Hole with their second home. And that's what my hope is. Sign the petition if you want, but if you call me first.
And then if you're gonna sign it, tell, what do you want us to cut then? And it's like, what service do you want to do without? Don't just say cut it to cut our taxes, then you tell us what you're willing to give up.
And folks, that wasn't even a question, but when given a platform, thank you. Appreciate that. No, that was good. Thank you. Okay, when we look at crime rates in our area, they're a little concerning. When you look at Area Vibes and other popular relocation or community comparison guides, we have more theft, retail theft, certainly, and property crime more than others in the US. How can the city and county help with our increasing crime rates?
I can start. That's just, this is a tough one because I realize it's an issue. Matter of fact, again, talking to patients, I have a patient that is a checker at Albertsons. He says, they've just told us don't even accost anybody. If somebody's walking out with a cart full of groceries, let them go rather than confront them. So, and then, I've only half jokingly said we should put in a police substation at Walmart because they're always having issues with shoplifting and things we have tried to do. I guess one thing the mayor told me on the way in, there are 2 reporting systems. And the one we're out to seems to report more crime and maybe be a little more accurate. But for example, the manager at Walmart doesn't even report, in Casper doesn't even report their shoplifting issues, so it doesn't appear in their data. We have recently hired 2 police officers that are going to be dedicated just to those issues. So we're hoping that, we've been short of manpower. We didn't add police officers, a lot of manpower. We cut back during COVID and we froze some positions. We're finally adding back, as the mayor talked about, in other areas like engineering and planning, but we're adding back police officers. We're adding back some firefighters to try and meet those demands. So we're hoping that by having them concentrate on especially those retail crimes and some of those things, we can start bringing those numbers down.
Yes, I get another soapbox. So really a lot of this is driven by mental health and substance use disorder. And you can go and talk to the sheriff. The sheriff's come and talked to this meeting before, but a lot of this is driven by failures in those areas. And I can tell you, I'm very happy with what the county's started to do, and the sheriff and the sheriff's department in terms of the jail. It's become a holding area for those with mental health issues in our community, but they come in on a petty crime. We have nowhere to really put them that addresses anything, actually makes and exacerbates their issue. Their sentence is, done. It's a 30-day sentence. They go and are released back into the community with no help, and they just reoffend. And so the commissioners have allocated money for the sheriff to finish out a mental health pod. We've hired some additional staff to help with mental health within the jail facility. We have always, or for the last number of years, really supported our treatment court programs. And we got a big push this last year in the legislature and got those moved from the Department of Health to the Supreme Court. And my hope with that is that we will see an expansion of those court programs, because they do reduce recidivism unlike any other criminal justice program. And you can expand those to a variety of issues. Right now we have drug and DUI court and a veterans treatment court. There's courts throughout our nation that deal with everything from mental health to domestic violence to youth, all of those things. And so as we have that backing of the state and of the Supreme Court and get the buy-in of more judges and attorneys with that credibility, my hope is that we can expand that, actually deal with the issue, treat the cause, and then ultimately reduce those rates.
Tanya, I knew I'd forgotten something else, so I had to check my notes. We've also promoted somebody into a position as a crimes analyst, and it's going to be their job to collect all the data, try and better target our efforts so that we can be more efficient in dealing with some of the problems that have been noted.
Well, we have just a few minutes left, and so would you guys be open to a couple of questions from the crowd? So maybe we'll take one or two depending on the response time. Does anybody have any questions for either Councilman Rennie or Commissioner Malm? Yes.
City trying to annex the base, and I've never understood that. Can you explain, is that feasible? Is that legal? Is that?
Much to the commissioner's chagrin, yes, it is feasible and legal. Yes, it is. The rationale behind that is commissioner's going to accuse us of a money grab. But some of it is financial. A lot of the monies, like I said earlier, a lot of our budget is dependent on the state and what we get from the state. And those monies are all determined on a population basis. So it would help Cheyenne in that regard. The other reason though, is that Cheyenne's, except for to the south, Cheyenne's landlocked. I mean, we can't, the commission has allowed ranchettes to be built to the east and to the north, so we can't grow those directions any longer. And we can't go to the west because of the base, but if we annex the base, then it does allow us then to eventually grow to the west as well. So those are two of our primary reasons. And we can do MOUs. The base would continue with essentially their police and fire service. We already have agreements with them anyway. They generally not a lot would change, except for the allocations within the state monies.
Okay. Yeah.
My face said it.
Do we have any other questions? Yeah, Eric.
The liaison or ombudsman role in the city building. And some of that additional hiring, has that role come back on the radar at all?
Eric, I've not heard it discussed. I think at this point we're waiting to see what the results of the mayor's research is. And I can bring it up. We're having a city council, our annual goal setting session on Tuesday. I can mention that and see if there's been any interest or any feedback from the others. But at this point, no.
And I think we have time for one more. Nope. Yeah, we have one.
It should not have an effect on the groundwater because at least those developments within the city are going to be on city sewer and sewer and water. The majority of that water now comes from the west slope. So, and we are looking that closely. And this is kind of unrelated to your question, but the Board of Public Utilities is looking at, this was one of our goals in last year's look at future water use on the part of the city because even though we've had a lot of decent moisture in the Colorado River Basin in the last year, that's a worry that if they ever say, you know, you got to reduce your water use, that could have a definite impact on us.
So you're gonna reduce your landscaping requirements you put on developers?
You know, as one who wrote the original landscaping ordinance, probably not. We have, we've scaled that back some. At least in commercial areas for what's considered non-usable grass, you used to get a point, which is just, you know, green lawn. You used to get a point for that. You no longer get a point for that in development. We're also looking at, I'm working with a couple people within the city to, in some of those areas, actually go to more native grasses, allow that to be done, or get some credit for that so you don't have to water those constantly. But anyway, to go back to your original question, no, that change won't affect the groundwater.
And those lot size, that more pertains obviously in the city, not the county. We still have standards in the county for 5.25 acres. Yeah.
I'm just trying to provide every person with the opportunity to live the American dream and have their 5-acre ranchette.
Well, you guys, please help me in giving these guys a round of applause. Thank you guys for being willing to sit up here with me. I very much appreciate it. And that really concludes our luncheon. Have a happy beginning to your 2024, and we will see you back February 2nd.